At 81, the legendary Patti LaBelle, known as the Godmother of Soul, broke a decades-long silence in a rare, emotional interview. While fans know her for grace, powerhouse vocals, and class, Patti held back a truth buried deep in the industry: shadows. For years, she bit her tongue, but now, she's naming names for musicians she quietly resented throughout her career. These weren't petty feuds. These were scars formed from betrayal, ego, and blatant disrespect. With age comes clarity, and Patti's confessions are not about revenge, but release. When she speaks, the industry listens, and what she said left jaws on the floor. Born on May 24, 1944, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Patti LaBelle grew up in a working-class neighborhood with music in her veins and gospel in her soul. Raised in a strict household, Patti found her voice in the Beulah Baptist Church choir where, even as a young girl, she stunned listeners with her emotional depth and vocal range. Despite her shyness offstage, music became her safe haven. In the early 1960s, she formed a doo-wop group called the Ordettes, which later evolved into the iconic Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells. With songs like Down the Aisle and You'll Never Walk Alone, Patti began carving a unique identity in a competitive, male-dominated industry. But it wasn't until the group reinvented itself as LaBelle in the 1970s with the cosmic hit Lagi Marmalagi that Patti's stardom exploded. Still, behind the stardust and platinum records, Patti faced hurdles that few saw. She dealt with the loss of group members, mismanagement, industry, politics, and sometimes betrayal from those she once considered peers. Despite all odds, she pushed forward and eventually launched a solo career that would define generations. Her voice, often called a divine force, became a symbol of empowerment and endurance. But even legends carry emotional burdens. And now, with the wisdom of age, Patti's lifting the veil on 4 names that haunted parts of her journey, not out of malice, but out of truth. Number 1. Aretha Franklin. Patti LaBelle and Aretha Franklin, 2 soul titans, 2 unmatched voices, 2 women who shaped generations of music lovers. But behind the powerful performances and red carpet smiles was a cold war that simmered for decades. Patti recently opened up about her complicated relationship with Aretha, calling it one of the most painful silences of her career. While the media often played up the diva feud for headlines, Patti revealed that the tension ran deeper than just professional rivalry. It started in the 60s, when Patti's group was just breaking through and Aretha was already being crowned the Queen of Soul. According to Patti, what began as silent competition slowly turned into quiet contempt. There were moments, award shows, backstage encounters where Aretha would snub her completely. Patti recalled a particularly heartbreaking moment at a tribute concert where she extended her hand and Aretha turned away publicly. For Patti, who admired Aretha's voice and impact deeply, the dismissal stung. She never wanted a rivalry. She wanted mutual respect. Over the years, they crossed paths dozens of times, but there was never a real conversation, ever a clearing of the air. Patti often bit her tongue to protect both their legacies. But now, at 81, she has found the courage to speak plainly. "I never hated her talent, I hated how she made me feel like I didn't belong," Patti confessed. She emphasized that it wasn't about jealousy, it was about dignity. 2 black women in the same arena should have lifted each other up, she said, but she made it hard. While Aretha is no longer here to share her side, Patti's honesty reveals the emotional cost of pride and silence. It's not bitterness, it's finally speaking her truth, even if it arrives decades late. Number 2. Luther Vandross. Among the names Patti LaBelle finally spoke aloud, the one that hurt the most was Luther Vandross. What made this confession so raw was not rivalry but love. Patti and Luther weren't just collaborators, they were close friends, musical soulmates who understood each other's passion, pain, and perfectionism. In the 80s and 90s, their voices often intertwined on stage and in the studio, delivering unforgettable performances that left fans breathless. But behind that harmony, there was a slow breakdown. Patti revealed that Luther, who struggled privately with self-image and control, often lashed out at those closest to him, including her. Their final fallout wasn't dramatic, but it was permanent. Patti shared that he stopped returning her calls after a disagreement about touring schedules and vocal arrangements. What broke her heart wasn't the disagreement, it was his silence. "I would have taken a scream, a fight, anything, but not silence," she said. When Luther fell ill and slipped into a coma in 2003, Patti tried to visit him. She was turned away by people close to him. That door closing, it felt like losing a brother before he was gone, she whispered. Even after his death in 2005, Patti carried the ache of unresolved friendship. She never disrespected him publicly, but now, she admits the bitterness grew over time. "I hated that he didn't fight for our friendship," she said. "We were supposed to be forever." For Patti, this wasn't about musical ego, it was about betrayal by someone she trusted with her heart. Her decision to name Luther wasn't a swipe at his legacy, but a reminder that behind the glittering lights, even icons bleed quietly. "Forgiveness," she says, "has come but forgetting. Never. I still sing his songs," she admitted, "but some nights, I cry when I do. Number 3. James Brown. When Patti LaBelle spoke James Brown's name, it wasn't with anger, it was with exhaustion. Known as the Godfather of Soul, James was a towering force in music, and Patti respected his legacy deeply, but she also couldn't ignore the disrespect she endured from him during their early years on the same circuit. In her words, James was larger than life and he made sure everyone knew it. Patti recalled being booked on the same shows in the 1960s and 70s, only to be pushed aside, minimized, and once even bumped off the headliner slot just minutes before curtain time, all because James demanded it. He didn't just want the spotlight, she said, he wanted to be the only light. She remembered being introduced without her full name, or having a microphone turned down mid-performance. At the time, she stayed silent out of fear of backlash, of losing gigs, of being labeled difficult. Years later, when she became a headliner in her own right, she hoped for reconciliation or even a quiet apology. It never came. Instead, James continued to treat her like a rival rather than a sister in the struggle. We were two black artists trying to survive in a world built to erase us, she said, but he treated me like the enemy. Patti said she never hated his music, she even danced to it. But what she hated was the dismissiveness, the way he made her feel invisible in spaces she worked so hard to enter. When James passed away in 2006, Patti mourned the legend but also mourned the relationship that never healed. I forgave him a long time ago, she admitted, but I carry the memory like a scar. And in naming him now, she's not lashing out, she's finally setting the record straight. Number 4. Teddy Pendergrass. Of all the names Patti LaBelle revealed, Teddy Pendergrass's inclusion stunned many because their bond was once unbreakable. Both Philadelphia icons, their roots ran deep. Patti was like a big sister to Teddy when he was just getting started, and she took pride in watching him rise from Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes drummer to a solo superstar. But what fans didn't know was that behind closed doors, fame and ego slowly drove a wedge between them. Patti shared how she championed Teddy early on, even bringing him on stage and into her world when others still questioned his star power. But as his fame soared, something shifted. He grew distant, then cold. Patti recalled times when she would call and be ignored, or hear that Teddy was bad-mouthing her in meetings and to mutual friends. The final blow came after his tragic car accident in 1982. Patti rushed to the hospital, desperate to be there for him, but was told he didn't want to see her. That crushed me, she said, voice trembling. I thought we were family. Years passed, and though they spoke again later, the closeness never returned. Patti always maintained a public respect for Teddy, performing his songs and honoring his memory. But privately, she held on to the hurt. I hated what he became when the lights got too bright, she confessed. Not the man he was, but the wall he built. Still, there was no gloating in her voice, only grief. Her decision to name Teddy wasn't a final insult, but a way of releasing a decades-old sorrow. I forgave him before he left this world, she said softly, but I never got to tell him that to his face. In speaking now, Patti is not condemning him, she's closing a painful chapter with truth.